Jeff plopped onto the couch of his house. He looked around. Even though he'd visited his house countless times for shelter, it brought back sad and haunting memories. So Jeff either drank or went to sleep to keep his mind off it. But instead, he fixed his eyes upon an old Nintendo game system he had. He pondered something for a minute, and finally reached for a box of games. He dug through them until he finally found a decent one to play, Majora's Mask. He kept a blank face as he put the game system and watched as the title screen flickered on. It already had 2 save files, Jeff and Liu. He decided to play his own file and selected it. He spawned in Clock Town and wandered around for a bit. Huh, I've never traveled into another's game, it read.
Confused, Jeff continued to reach for the power off button. Another chat box had popped up.
Don't. You'll regret that.
A bit frightened by this, he quickly turned off the game. TV turned black. With 3 seconds after Jeff walked away from it, loud static started flashing on the screen. Jeff, startled by this, covered his ears. He then tripped backwards and landed on his back. He looked up just in time to see a dark shape resembling a hand emerge from the screen. Then another, and finally, a head-shaped shadow rippled through the screen. He turned around and looked at Jeff. It looked like a young boy's head, but the eyes were dark pools of black and blood streaks from them. The head had blonde hair and ... Link's hat. The figure then emerged from the TV, and the static became mute. The voice seemed to be a demented version of Link. Jeff immediately stood up and drew his knife from his hoodie pocket. Who are you? What are you doing here?
I'm Ben, and you? Replied the ghost casually, as if it hadn't come through Jeff's TV. Oh, and that knife won't do you any good. Ben glanced at Jeff's weapon as it flew from his hand. Ha, I didn't know I could travel from game to game.
Jeff was shaking. He remembered the name from somewhere. He remembered hearing a story on the news about a kid named Ben who had died of a young age from drowning. Ben? You were the kid on the news. I'm having hallucinations. You died. You died long ago.
I was that kid on the news, and you're not hallucinating or dreaming. All real,
He said in a playful manner, climbing onto the couch and starting to jump on it. What's wrong with your face? He tilted his head to one side in a curious way. Most humans have normal faces, but you're weird.
Hey! Jeff shouted, picking up his knife and throwing it at Ben like a dart. Viciously, it passed right through him and hit the ground with a large donk. Ben giggled.
I told you, it won't do any good, he taunted Jeff. Na 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 na. He stuck his tongue out, jumping from one couch to another in the living room.
Jeff paused for a moment. Ben reminded him of his little brother. His little brother, Luke. How long are you going to stay there? He said in a nicer, but not completely nice tone.
Depends. You got any younger siblings? Any candy?
Ben said as if he were a normal boy and not the cyber remains of one.
No, Ben was dead. Jeff replied in a broken, sad tone. Tears were starting to roll from his dry, permanently open eyes. He immediately wiped them away. He did not want to cry in front of someone he barely met.
Ben's forehead creased in sorrow. A frown was forming on his face. He'd never seen someone break down so easily.
Well, I guess I can stay here. It seems awfully lonely here.
Jeff looked up at Ben. He felt as if something traumatic was going to happen. But he didn't care. He was just so lonely after all those years. He needed someone to talk to. Relieved, he ran up to the ghost boy and hugged him. Ben knew he was in pain. Hugged him back.